Welcome. Lock your doors. Turn off the lights and try to get comfortable while I read you a story. Tonight's story is, do you know your house's history? It was the last building of the day, a dark gray rectangle on a quiet street in a forgettable neighborhood, the kind of place where the average tenant was. A pearl-clutching 80-year-old who wouldn't buzz the door open for Christ himself. In my work as a gas meter inspector, I'd run into a lot of types like that. Even with my official vest, badge, and clipboard, people were suspicious. I couldn't say I blamed them. After all any psychopath could buy. An official-looking vest and clipboard. By my third week on the job, I could size up buildings by sight. I could usually tell whether I'd be dealing with a busy professional working from home, families with multiple children who were almost sure to be out of the house when I buzzed, or packs of young people who left their doors unlocked, and often didn't even know what a gas meter was. I breathed a sigh of relief when I saw a bucket propping open the exterior door. The corridor was gloomy, but I could just make out a pudgy retiree in a sweater vest mopping the hallways. "Good afternoon," I waved from the street. "I'm for the gas company." "Come on in, lad." His teeth glinted in the dim light. For some reason, those words sounded like a threat. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I realized that I did not want to step into that dark hallway with its ugly wood paneling, wet tile floor that smelled like bleach. The old man leaned on his mop expectantly. If I didn't register the building today, I told myself, I'd just have to come back tomorrow. It'd be out of my way and off my route. But I was already barely meeting my quota. I sighed and I walked towards the janky, old-fashioned elevator. "This is a safe neighborhood. Usually," the man commented. As I passed, I realized why his voice seemed to snarl, why the light reflected so strangely on his teeth. They're made of metal. Kind of weird prosthetic. The old man must have noticed how I recoiled because he held out a hand to steady me. He said, "A few weeks ago, I was walking down that very street outside when a group of teenagers came running up behind me. They grabbed my wallet, my watch, and when I tried to scream, they smashed out my teeth." He smiled as I got on the elevator. At least the guy didn't follow me into the elevator, I thought, as I rode the rickety thing up to the top floor. As usual, I'd worked my way down, knocking on doors and marking down the responses I received. No one was home in apartment 5A. Apartment 5B. Handwritten note was taped to the door. Gas meter 84324. We do not open the door for strangers. I rolled my eyes and took note of the number before continuing down the stairs. There was no natural light in the hallway, which was lit only by dusty wall lamps. The hair on the back of my neck was standing up, but I couldn't figure out just what it was about the place that unnerved me so much. It wasn't like this was the rundown tenement where a junkie had chased me around with a dirty needle, or the eerily clean penthouse where I'd found an heiress floating in a bathtub with her wrists cut. Even so, each time I knocked, I found myself hoping that no one and no thing would answer. When the door of apartment 4B opened just a crack, I think I actually jumped backward a little. Yeah. That cigarette dangled from the lips of the overweight blonde woman peering at me from the other side of the chain. She looked me over with worry, leaving fear in her eyes. "What, I'm here to... All right, the gas. Well, come on in." I could hear the echo of cartoons and squealing kids from deep inside the apartment. Something bothered me about the way the woman had answered the door, but I was halfway to the meter before I realized what it was. She'd opened it almost as soon as I'd knocked, like she'd been listening for something. As I scooted around overflowing stacks of cardboard boxes, I told myself that I was letting my imagination run away with me. "Sorry," the blonde woman coughed. "We're still unpacking." "It's all right," I said, slipping on a child's sock. I see why they can't keep tenants, though. She blew out a cloud of smoke. Whoever is in the apartment below us makes noise like you wouldn't believe. Dad, a choice. I'd get out of here, but I can't afford it. Even if I could, I wouldn't want to do that to the kids. The move was rough on him. You keep having these dreams, you know. Night terrors, the doctor calls them. Yeah, well, change is hard when you're young. I was only half paying attention. My work app had just crashed and was taking forever to reboot. When it finally finished loading, I input the number and flashed her a smile. All done. Have a good one. You too. She looked like she wanted to say something more, but she just gave me a tired little wave. She locked the door behind me as I left. I proceeded down to 3A and 3B. A knock on 3A's door received no answer. I was walking towards 3B when the door swung wide open. 3, it was only darkness on the other side. Come in, an elderly woman's voice called out. I hesitated. Could you turn on the lights for me, please? No answer. My heart was racing as I stepped into the gloom. I ran my hand along the wall, feeling for a switch. The door slammed shut behind me. I would have sworn I heard an old woman's voice whispering in the blackness. Don't worry, Grandma won't let him get you. Suddenly, I felt hard plastic beneath my fingers. A light switch. The bulb flickered on, receiving a dusty, empty room with grimy, yellow walls. Hello, I ventured. No answer. I wanted to raise the blinds to let some exterior light in, but the cords had been cut. Besides, I wasn't supposed to touch anything other than the gas meter. As I walked past the lightless kitchen, I chanced to look inside. Pale man, wearing nothing but filthy underwear, stood with his back to me, holding himself and rocking back and forth. I muttered an apology and kept moving. I walked in on worse things, but feeling of wrongness in this place was becoming impossible to ignore. I told myself that all I had to do was get to the end of the hallway and read that damn meter. It'd all be over. I heard movement in a room across the hall. Child barely visible in the gloom of the apartment's single light bulb reflecting its milky eyes. You shouldn't be here, the child snarled, taking a step towards me. He'll see you. Now. I could see that his face was purplish bloated. There were bruises in the shape of bony hams around his neck. Grandma said she'd save us, but she couldn't, because this is his place, and nothing can protect you from him. I moaned and took a step back. Another child appeared behind the first. His neck twisted at an impossible angle. What's wrong with you? It called. Can't you see that you're in hell? The bathroom door creaked open. I ran, spreading past the kitchen. I noticed for the first time the bloodless knife wounds in the pale man's back. I could hear footsteps, but they weren't coming from the hallway. They were coming from above me, filthy. Footprints appearing on the ceiling, closing in on where I stood. Whatever was making them panted with wet, excited breaths. I tugged on the doorknob. Of course it wouldn't open. Help, I screamed, pounding on the door. In a few seconds, the thing would be right on top of me. A key turned into lock, and I practically fell into the hallway. It was the retiree from earlier, still, holding his mop bucket. You got locked in or something? He chuckled. Lucky the super gave me a spare set of keys. I moaned something incomprehensible and gestured over my shoulder, but there was nothing behind me but yellowed walls. Let me guess, he snorted. You saw his apartment was wide open. Went inside, the door blew shut behind you. Happens all the time in this draft. The old place. Keep telling the super he needs to. Fix the damn lock so that door doesn't creak open all the time. And he won't lift a finger until some renter gets in there. Good luck with that. I wouldn't go in that apartment if you paid me. What do you mean? I gasped, trying to keep up with her tirade as he walked back downstairs. It was a tragedy. It was a real shame. Y'all know the old woman who lived there was a bit batty. Nobody realized how far gone she was, till it was too late. She thought that there was some kind of presence in the apartment, a him, she called it. She convinced herself that he was going to take her grandkids away, so she strangled him in her sleep. And to protect him, she said, believe that. And when her son found out what she'd done, she stabbed him to death, right there in the kitchen. Their retiree shook his head as he locked up the mopping bucket in a grimy janitorial closet. James's part was how they found the old woman afterward. She was lying in the middle of the living room with a face like she'd been screaming her head off, putting a mark on her like she'd been scared to death. Listen to me. Rambling on when you got a job to do. It's 124, 615. Retiree finished cheerfully. What my gas meter? 124, 615. Apartment 2, A. You got that? My legs felt weak. I staggered towards the door. Hey, the retiree shouted after me. Where are you going? Don't you have more apartments to check? I did, but I didn't check them. Not that evening or any other. I turn in my resignation as soon as I get back to the office. My days of walking into strange apartments were over. What had happened in Unit 3B of that anonymous gray apartment complex? It stuck with me, made me think that every building, just like every person, has its own true story. And some of those stories are horror stories. That wraps up the story for tonight. If you're craving more, check out my other stories. Thank you for listening, and have sweet dreams.